Today I'm going to show you a detailed comparison between the new Insta360 X5 and the X4. I'll show you what similarities the two cameras have and of course how the X5 differs from the X4, which is now only a year old. And I'll try to help you decide whether it's worth upgrading from the X4 to the X5. Or if you don't yet own a 360 camera, which of these two cameras is the right choice for you. Because one thing is clear, the X4 is of course still a great camera that is now available at a lower price than the X5. So is it worth upgrading or paying more for the X5? Let's find out. At first glance, the Insta360 X5 looks exactly the same as the X4. It's exactly the same size and weighs the same. The buttons are in the same places. Only the USB door has been relocated. The surface has been slightly redesigned and no longer has grooves, but is more similar in design to the thermogrip cover. But the small changes serve a purpose, because the X5 has new microphones, and you can see here at the front a new wind guard. We will test the improvements in audio quality a little later. But one thing is already clear: size and weight do not play a role when choosing between these two cameras. Nevertheless, the body of the X5 has been improved for underwater shots. The X5 is waterproof up to 15 meters without a dive case. The X4 up to 10 meters. And the body has another very important difference, which for many could be an important argument for buying the X5. The protruding lenses are a weak point for a 360 camera, as they can easily be damaged, especially if you also want to use your 360 camera as an action camera. You can install lens guards on both cameras to protect the lenses. However, this can have a negative effect on the image quality and lead to unsightly lens flares. This is why it's now possible to replace a damaged lens cover on the X5 yourself, similar to a GoPro or the Ace Pro 2. And this is not possible on the X4. You still have to send it in and have it repaired if you damage it. For the X5, however, there is a lens replacement kit that allows you to replace the cover yourself. This is certainly one of the very important advantages of the X5 over the X4. If we now switch on both cameras, you can see that the display is the same size on both cameras. I would even say that it's the same display. And there's another similarity. Both cameras have a very similar interface and almost the same shooting modes. But that's it for the similarities, because a lot has changed on the inside. The Insta360 X5 not only has newer and faster image processors, but also new and larger sensors than the X4. And at 1/1.28 inches, the X5 sensors are significantly larger than the X4's 1/2 inch sensors. Many are of the opinion that sensor size only plays a role in poor lighting conditions, but this is not true. A larger sensor can have a positive effect on color reproduction, detail, dynamic range, and of course image noise. A larger sensor therefore almost always has a positive effect on image quality. If we look at these comparison shots, the images look very similar at first glance. But I've looked at these shots in detail and will now show you where I see the biggest differences, even in good lighting conditions. The colors of the two shots look very similar. However, the X5 shot has a little more contrast and a little more saturation. But these are not decisive differences. What is much more interesting is that you can see relatively clearly that the X5 shot has a visibly better dynamic range. This is particularly noticeable whenever the light source, in this case the sun, is visible in the frame or shining in. Then you can see that the bright areas in the image don't look so overexposed. This is a clear improvement compared to the X4, and these shots were not taken in HDR mode, but in standard video mode in 8K 30. On the other hand, I wouldn't say that the X5's footage has significantly more detail, even when enlarged. But what is noticeable, especially when enlarged, is that the X5's footage looks cleaner and therefore has less image noise, even in very good lighting conditions. But, and it has to be said, I've now specifically drawn your attention to these differences. At first glance, you wouldn't notice them so quickly, because the X4 naturally also takes very good shots, especially in good lighting conditions. But there are a few other important differences. For example, with slow motion shots. The X5 can now finally take slow motion shots at 120 frames per second. With the X4, the limit is 100 frames per second. And this difference is important for me, because I produce all my videos at 30 frames per second. I can now produce a slow motion shot at 25%. Previously, only 33% was possible. And this is a relevant difference. And that's not the only difference when it comes to slow motion recordings. In my opinion, the differences in image quality are greater here than with normal recordings. You have to reduce the resolution to 4K on both cameras for slow motion recordings. But these are 360 shots that still need to be reframed, which is why the resolution is then greatly reduced again when exporting. And I have the impression that with this lower resolution, the larger sensors are even more important. In any case, the slow motion shots from the X4 look very good. Both cameras can take HDR shots, but Insta360 has opted for a new approach here. While active HDR is still a separate shooting mode on the X4, HDR has been integrated into the normal video mode on the X5 and is activated by default. But you can deactivate the HDR function at any time if you wish. And on both cameras, the resolution must be reduced to 5.7K for HDR. This means that if you shoot in 8K, the HDR function is also automatically deactivated on the X5. In HDR, the shots look very similar, and here too, the shots from the X5 have slightly less image noise in the dark areas. But there is another important difference. On the X5, HDR recordings are possible in 5.7K with up to 60 frames per second. On the X4, the maximum is 30 frames per second. But precisely because the dynamic range in standard video mode has been greatly improved, I will increasingly be filming in 8K 30 and foregoing HDR. Both cameras offer 3 color profiles: standard, vivid and flat. If you want to heavily edit the colors of your recordings, only the X5 now offers an additional lock mode, whereby it should also be said that the new lock mode is not available in 8K, but only in 5.7K. I also think that this is not a 10-bit mode, but only 8-bit. Now we've seen that there are differences in image quality in good lighting conditions, but I wouldn't say that these would necessarily justify an upgrade from the X4 to the X5. So let's take a look at one really crucial difference between these two cameras. This concerns the new pure video recording mode for low light and the significantly improved image quality in low light conditions. On the X4, it's necessary to reduce the resolution to 5.7K for slightly better image quality in low light. There is no separate shooting mode for these situations. The X5 now has its own shooting mode for low light. And this is also important, you will no longer have to reduce the resolution for optimum results and can also shoot in low light in 8K. You can see here that the X4 can still keep up relatively well as long as the lighting conditions are not so bad. But the darker it gets, the greater the difference. The X4 then reduces the shutter speed, which leads to visibly poorer stabilization. The shot also loses a lot of detail, especially when there is movement and motion blur is added. When it gets very dark, the difference is quite obvious. This is simply where the significantly larger image sensors of the X5 come into play. Incidentally, all the shots in this video were taken with the default settings, and I didn't make any manual adjustments. Of course, the X5 is not a low-light specialist either, but if you want to take indoor shots with a 360 camera from time to time, then you should definitely go for the X5. Earlier I said that the X4 and X5 feature almost the same shooting modes. That's true, but apart from the new pure video mode, the X5 has another new shooting mode, the InstaFrame Mode. This mode is designed to relieve you of reframing if required. In this mode, you get 2 clips as a result of your recording. A normal 360 clip that you can reframe as usual, and an automatically reframed flat clip that you no longer need to edit. And for this second clip, you can decide before recording whether you want to be in the center of the frame yourself, or if you want, you can also determine the framing yourself before recording. Basically, you get a clip just like from the Me mode, as well as a 360 clip that you can still edit. The maximum resolution for the 360 clip is 5.7K plus, which is quite good, and 1080 for the flat clip, which is rather low. The flat clip is therefore mainly suitable for social media. Of course, the X5 can also be used in single lens mode, just like the X4. You don't have to edit these recordings, and you can use the camera in single lens mode just like any other action camera. And if that interests you, you should take a close look at this part, because I find that in good lighting conditions, the differences in single lens mode are perhaps even greater than in 360 mode. The X5 shot has significantly more detail here, and what's also interesting, the face is visibly better exposed, especially in backlit situations. Take a look at this comparison shot. The colors also look a bit more vibrant overall. The X5 is a 360 camera that easily comes close to a current action camera in terms of image quality, even in single lens mode. There will be a comparison with the current conventional action cameras at a later date. For really good audio quality when vlogging, it makes sense to use an external microphone. Of course, this applies to both cameras, but as I said, the X5 has a new wind guard on the front. This is designed to prevent annoying wind noise. So let's listen if it really makes a difference. I think that was relatively clear. Not only the wind noise is better reduced, the background noise when vlogging is also significantly better removed. And that is a very important improvement. We have now seen that the image quality has been improved and also that there are 2 new shooting modes. But the X5 has a few other improvements over the X4. As you can see, the 2 batteries look almost identical, but they are not. The battery of the X4 has 2290 mAh. The battery of the X5 has 2400 mAh. But what does this mean in practice? In 8K 30, you can shoot with the Insta360 X5 for 1 hour and 27 minutes until the battery is empty. In my test, the X4 was able to shoot for 1 hour and 12 minutes in the same setting. But that's not the only improvement when it comes to battery life. The X5 has received a new endurance mode, which deactivates certain functions in the background. The endurance mode is also only available in 5.7K, but in this mode, the X5 can shoot in 5.7K 30 for 3 hours. And that's not just a claim from Insta360, I've tested it. The X4 can shoot in 5.7K 30 for a maximum of 135 minutes. So that's a significant improvement. But not only that, the X5 also charges the battery much faster. It supports fast charging and charges 80% of the battery in about 20 minutes. I know that many people also want to know what the situation is with overheating. I'd like to say that I personally never had any problems with overheating with the X4, but that may of course be due to the way I use it. I almost always only use the camera when I'm on the move, so there's usually airstream. I also rarely take really long shots, and of course I live in the mountains here. In a test here in the office at 22 degrees Celsius, the X5 was able to shoot for 1 hour and 19 minutes before it shut down due to overheating. The X4 for 1 hour and 4 minutes. So if that's important to you, that would be another argument in favor of the X5, which will last a little longer in very warm temperatures. In 5.7K, by the way, neither camera had a problem with overheating. Apart from all these differences, the X5 also has a few new additional features that the X4 doesn't have. The most interesting one is twist to shoot. When using the X5 on a selfie stick, you can start a shot by twisting the camera back and forth twice. You can also stop the recording in the same way. By the way, this is the 114 cm long invisible selfie stick from Insta360, the perfect stick for the X5 or X4 to start with. Apart from twist to shoot, there are a few other minor changes. Perhaps I should also say that with the release of the X5, the app has also been completely redesigned. The clips are now presented more clearly, and reframing has become even easier. You can simply select a perspective. For example, selfie view. The clip is then analyzed and reframed with a tap, as if you had applied deep drag to the entire clip. But of course, these new improvements also apply to the X4. And one important difference is still missing: the price. The Insta360 X5 costs $550 and the X4 is $120 cheaper. If you use the links in the video description, you will also receive a free gift with both cameras. In the case of the X5, in the first few days, you will even receive a lens replacement kit worth $35. But the offer is limited. Personally, I would go for the X5. I think the better image sensors, the good low-light performance, the better audio quality and the interchangeable lens cover are worth the extra cost. Whether the many new features also justify an upgrade depends of course on how important these improvements are to you. In any case, the X5 is a great 360 camera and fulfills many user wishes. I think you've now got a good impression of the differences between the two cameras. So what's your opinion on the X5? Write it in the comments. There will be a detailed tutorial on the Insta360 X5. So stay tuned, give me a like as feedback if the video was interesting for you, and see you next time.